And we're going to try that for 3 months and 6 months. We're just going to monitor the costs and see what that's doing to us. About 30% of the garbage that goes to that roll-off site is City of Canton, First Friday, et cetera, garbage that, you know, it's hard to ever take that away. We got to do something with it. So when you look at trying to break even with making it free to the rest of the residents, we know that's not going to work. So we'd like to also open it up to anyone else who wants to bring their garbage during our hours, and certainly to monitor how that works. And we thought about cutting back to 3 days, but keeping it open 5 days a week if we're trying to make money on the people that come and are willing to pay from outside the city, that might work better. And so we're just going to try this out. If they need some tweaking or adjustment after 30 days or 180 days, we'll do that. But we are going to try to get Richard Pogue to implement this as soon as possible after this meeting, if we vote it in. So I'm looking for a motion to open the site to 5 days a week as it is now, free to all Canton residents, and charged to any and all comers under our rate schedule.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Tell me how that actually differs from what we're doing right now, I guess.
Right now, it's only open to City of Canton residents, and they're charged for it under schedule.
Okay.
So we're going to make it free to all Canton residents and open it up to non-residents. Because one of the faults, Gene, I think, and Camille and I saw this happen when we did that free day in June, is that when someone pulls up with a truckload of junk, they're not typically going to, if you turn them away, that junk is going somewhere. We had people actually just come out right and say, I'm going to take it to Kroger and dump it in the back of their gondola. But we don't want that. So even though they weren't Canton residents, we said go ahead, because we don't want one of our resident businesses to be imposed upon by somebody dumping garbage in there. So if someone pulls up to our site, we're going to take whatever it is, we're going to charge them, we're going to see what that looks like. If someone tries to abuse it, we're going to take note of that and try to make it work if we can. Go ahead, John.
You want to address the fee for out residents?
Well, we had a schedule that was provided. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a schedule that Richard came up with that he thought might make sense. And it is a little bit different schedule than what we have had before to try to break it down. But it's really hard to, when you're dealing with junk, to piecemeal it out. So he's going to do the best he can to follow that schedule and then charge the customer accordingly. So we're going to try it. If it doesn't work, we'll tweak it or stop it or change it.
Do you feel like what you have is specific enough, or do we need to get the city manager to put it in a more concise format as guidelines and so forth?
I'll ask Richard to contact you. Richard came up with it, and so he's managing it. So he came up with a list and the charges for each one of those items. So. And I talked to him about this. He likes the idea. So he especially likes the idea we're going to try it and then try to monitor it and see how it works. So, I mean, if he has any issues with any charges that are kind of off the chart, you guys can work it out. Not at the site, because somebody has to make a decision right there, but on a permanent basis. If the list isn't complete enough, he'll go with you and try to figure it out.
I think the approach there is very good, and I think that's probably what we need to be doing. And so we have a motion and a second to follow these general guidelines that you've outlined here tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
Probably as soon as October 1st, if he can implement it that fast. If he can, he can. If
October 1st?
Yeah, if he can.
Okay.
That's our beginning of our calendar year, business year.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Item 9B, discussion of food truck regulations. It has, become apparent that we've had some conflicts between local restaurants and businesses and food trucks coming downtown, some for special events and some for other purposes, selling food there. So it's imperative, I think, that we really develop some kind of guidelines that would be fair to all concerned and fair to our businesses downtown as well. So, Mr. Peppers, you got something on that you want to talk about?
Well, what we first did is we looked at the peddler's license that the city currently has, and basically in the way the ordinance reads, a peddler is defined as any person who engages in the business of selling any goods, wares, merchandise, or services, or who solicits orders for such goods, wares, merchandises, or services by going from house to house or place to place, and who does not have a permanent place of business in the city, and who is not employed by any person having a permanent place of business in the city. We thought that there might be a possibility that we could issue food trucks within the city a peddler's license. But there's a caveat in the peddler's license ordinance that says that you cannot sell from a motorized vehicle. So we have a couple of different options here. We can either work with the city attorney to draft a food truck ordinance and have a special license just for food trucks, or we can amend our peddler section to fit food trucks in there. I think that the overlying thought is that we would have some type of license that those food trucks could pick up on an annual basis with the city that would be based similar to our other business licenses. It could be based on what their projected sales are within the city for a given year, and we could have ranges there. It could be based off of their last year of sales, or we could just have a flat fee for those specific businesses that are taking advantage of that license. Additionally, they're not supposed to be set up on public streets without, of course, permission from the city, or unless it's a special event as it's related there. But we would look at other communities and see what they've done with this. I know this is a hot topic around the state because it is, food trucks are really great specifically in those areas where there's no food available, but where you have a conflict with bricks and mortar businesses that have paid to have a business license in that space. You have to come up with a way to equitably make sure that you've got licenses on those food trucks as well.
Anyone have any questions about that? Mr. Rust?
And Billy, the First Friday event, when you have 20 food trucks come in, would they be affected?
Well, I think what we would suggest is that as it relates to special event permits, special events, that food trucks would be no different than if you had a food vendor set up at a festival as part of a festival. We would want to know that information up front. Now, I would highly encourage our special events to look at those food trucks that have a permit with the city as using those. And for most food trucks, I don't think they would have a problem with having a permit through the city, whether it's a peddler's permit or a special license that we're able to come up with.
Do we as a city have any obligation to make sure that these food trucks have sanitation restrictions?
All of that falls back to environmental health, Department of Agriculture. We don't have to physically inspect the trucks, but as it relates to a food truck and it relates to signage, for instance, then yes, if they physically take a sign off their truck and set it up, well, are they in violation with our sign ordinance, even though they're doing it on private property, for instance? It's not an issue when a company calls in a food truck to say cater an event. Maybe you're having a customer appreciation day and you've called in a food truck to serve food to your employees, because then you just hired a caterer. It's different when you've brought somebody onto a private site to sell food to the general public, because they're skirting around our current business licenses to do business in the city.
I just have one more comment. I've been to cities that have entire blocks devoted to food trucks, and they're permanent. They're relatively permanent. But it seemed to me if we ever wanted to, have an event like a concert in the park on Fridays or all Fridays, and have a bunch of food trucks come in, it would attract people even to the bricks and mortars. I mean, people might not want to eat outside. They go to R&M or some other upscale restaurant in Canton, as opposed to eating in a food truck. I'm not sure it would take away from them, but I don't know if we'd ever want to do that, because it might be an interesting event, because I can tell you, the cities I've been to, I've seen these blocks of food trucks, they're packed.
Well, and you could regulate in an ordinance locations where food trucks are allowed to do business within the city on a routine basis. That would be up to you. The one thing you don't want to get in a situation of is having a business that pays a business license to operate in a certain location and a food truck pulling up in front of their location, taking business away from that. And if it's a special event and there's lots of people in the area and we have enough establishments to serve the people and everybody's getting something off of it, that's one thing. If a food truck is specifically coming downtown to make money and it ends up taking money away from those bricks and mortar businesses, that's when you get into the
I think one of the things that sort of exacerbated this the problem is that some of the food trucks have, from some of the people I've talked to, are coming in and sort of cherry picking the good days. I mean, when the court is in or something is going on, they get in that, and then they're out of town, and then the rest of the week our downtown restaurants are there to try to pick up the pieces, so to speak.
Well, additionally, by having some type of process for them to get a license or a permit, we make sure, one, that they are a business in the state of Georgia, that they're paying, taxes to the state of Georgia to do business. We don't currently have a way to know that or to police that unless we have some type of process for which they can apply to the city to do business.
They're probably collecting the tax, whether they're paying it or not. It's the only issue. I'm seriously.
Mr.
it.
Goodman?
I particularly like them having to have a license and to be inspected by the health inspector, because I've put on several of these events through the years for the high school, and I'll tell you, you get all sorts of some things that really you could get sick off of. But the food trucks out there so far have been very good, but I've got a lot of complaints from the restaurants here in town when, like the mayor says, sometimes they come in and just kind of cherry pick, and it's really hard for them to make a go of it every day, and then they come in on a big event and just pick it up. I like the food trucks, I like what they offer, but I think we've really got to sit down and figure out exactly what we want from them and what we want to give them, not just open it up, because they can take advantage of it and take advantage of our businesses that are already there.
Mr. Peppers, do you think that, did you have something you want to speak? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you had mentioned two approaches to trying to regulate or license, and I'm thinking rather than trying to adapt an ordinance that doesn't really fit, I think your idea of looking at what other communities are doing and trying to come up with an ordinance especially for this issue is the more sensible approach to me. That way we're covering all the issues related just to this and not just trying to squeeze it into an ordinance we already have.
Sure. Yeah, to follow up with that, it was going to be my suggestion that maybe if you could work, maybe either in the next, either October work session or November work session, try to have some type of ordinance drafted for us to meet and discuss and take a look at, and go from there.
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next item, discussion of weekend sign regulations and enforcement. We've had some complaints about a lot of signs, particularly at some of the shopping centers and along some of the main thoroughfares, of signs for businesses, even not just campaign signs, but signs for businesses that may have one particular sign, maybe 25 or 30 of them in a row, just saying the same thing, advertising a business. And I know at one time we did sort of let that slide back when real estate companies wanted to, over the weekend, they'd put up signs for showing homes or directions to particular real estate they were selling and stuff like this. But it does appear that it's getting a little more out of hand now. So you have any ideas on that?
Well, most communities during the recession relaxed their sign ordinances because they wanted businesses to get as much business as they could. So that's not anything particular to Canton necessarily. We've talked with staff, we've talked with code enforcement. I think what we'll probably do is look at the month of October as an opportunity to go out there, take some pictures, sit down with business owners, make sure they have a copy of the sign ordinance, make sure they understand, you know, what they can and cannot do, and then use a period after that to start, you know, doing some more weekend enforcement,
Okay.
so that, you know, we can get that done.
Mr.
Yes,
Russell?
sir.
Hey, Billy, since I spent a lot of time putting up signs over the years, I can tell you that like clockwork at 4 or 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, there's hundreds of signs that go out, particularly for real estate. And I got to tell you something, I made the mistake of putting one of my signs right where this guy's was. He threw it away because he wanted that spot. But about 5 o'clock on Sunday, they take them down, and there's one simple reason for that. Our code enforcement officer went home at 5 o'clock on Friday and didn't come back till Monday morning. So all they're trying to do is skirt the fact that we didn't have code enforcement on the weekend. And there's people that have a business of putting up these signs. And I think we just have to make it aware. We're either going to let them do it or stop it. And before we stop it, we have to give them, I think, some sort of notice and taking some pictures and say, look, you've been getting away with this. You're not going to get away with it. Here's the situation. We're going to pull your signs. You can come down and pay $25 per sign or whatever it is to pick them back up at the police department or wherever. And that's what it's going to be. And I think it's only really fair to give them some notice because we've been letting it go.
Well, where there are signs and there are clear issues with individuals who've placed a sign that's obstructing a view, you know, turning or something like that on the road, we're going to go ahead and take those down, you know, as we can. Yeah. But, you know, we don't have code enforcement working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, you know, we're going to do the best that we can as it's related to that. But even into campaign signs and things like that, the best approach is taking a picture of it and sharing back with the owner of that sign what makes that a bad placement. Or you've got too many on one property, you can have one. Whatever we have in our specific sections of the rule, we need to make sure that there's a period of time for people to understand it and correct it themselves before we're physically out there pulling up every single sign.
Okay. All right. So the next item, the discussion of the smoke alarm battery replacement services. Have you given more thought to that? You know, we talked about maybe explorers for the fire and police department or something, maybe participating in that.
I think Chief Floyd and I've talked a little bit about it. Chief Mitchell and I have as well. You know, we're going to have to really sit down and think about how we would set a program like that up and what the cost might be associated with that. You know, regardless of whether we had explorers do it or if we had our own staff do it, we're going to have staff there to watch the explorers and make sure it's done correctly. I still have some concerns as it's related to some of it as to what our liability is.
Right.
If we're replacing batteries and there's a faulty battery and we have an issue, you know, how much fault falls back on us. You know, we'll just have to look around at some other communities that do it and see exactly how they manage and run their programs.
See if maybe you can get a copy of the ordinance where Mr. Bonner was talking about, and see if they have something, or they may not have anything. They may just do it. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, give some more thought to that because he'll be wanting an answer too.
Yes, sir.
One quick thought.
The only other thing, you have another report.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay.
I wanted to say something about
Okay, I'm
that.
sorry. Go ahead.
I ran into Andy Bonner at the end of the last meeting. I told him, I said, I do not want to see our police department or fire department out there putting in batteries, because he said, well, if they're just sitting around, let them go out and do that on a schedule. And I said, well, fires don't come on schedule. So you're going to have a guy on a ladder 5 miles away from the fire station. He's got to get back to the fire station to get on the wagon, to get on the fire truck, to get out to put out a fire. It's far more important to put out that fire than putting in a battery. So I'm really diametrically opposed to sending firefighters out to put in batteries, but I am very much in favor of some program to do some sort of assistance. And your liability issue is a good one, because if you put explorers, where we have a fire group of explorers, we create that, because you got, if you got older people you're trying to keep from falling off ladders. We don't want young people to fall off ladders, particularly if we send them out to do that. So I think we got to be real careful how we do this and do it the right way, and certainly to help people that need help. And we just got to think this one through a little bit before we do it.
And it may be a good program that maybe we can partner with a nonprofit or a church or something like that during a certain time of the year and let them help, you know. Let people sign up through us and let them help or something like that, get the work done.
One thought I had is that you could have a sign-up sheet at like Home Depot or Lowe's or something, and when they buy the 9-volt batteries, it's the only ones that are ever used there, they could have a little slip there if they want to call this number if you want help putting this battery in. I mean, it might be a way that they might help us sponsor even some. You're going to send people out to put in batteries. If somebody doesn't have one, you need one there. So you're going to need some batteries too. And somebody, Railvac or somebody might sponsor it. I don't know. It's a thought. But we need to noodle this one a little bit before we go and do anything.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. One other item I wanted to mention, if you would, Mr. Peppers, if you would set up a meeting with Mr. Martin, and I'll be happy to be there maybe first part of next week. We do need to get him some answers.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Happy to.
All right. Thank you. The only other item, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for litigation and real estate.
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. We will not be coming back out to vote on anything after this. Thank y'all. Well, it's the right thing.